Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Inhaled Insulin. Fast in, fast out fits your lifestyle. By Omnipod 5, the only tubeless pump that integrates with Dexcom G6. And by Dexcom G7, the #1 recommended CGM brand.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, you may know Neil Greathouse better as The Beaties. He posts daily about diabetes on social media. It's a lot of work and not his real job, so why does he do it?
I mean, I've had type 1 for 31 years.
Yeah.
Maybe I've learned something. There are some days, though, I realize I haven't learned anything. I'm like, why did I do that again? I did it again. What is wrong with me? That happens. And then there are other times where I go, okay, I want to be a little bit ahead of somebody. I want to be walking step in step with somebody. And then I want to find somebody who is brand new to this.
There is so much to Neil's story. He's become a diabetes educator, and he's an open book. He'll share about going into DKA not too long ago, a failed marketing effort with a big diabetes company, and much more. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome back to another week of the show. I'm your host, Stacey Sims, and you know we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. With the time shiftiness of podcasting, it's always hard to talk about what just happened. I want to talk about Thrive-A-Beaties, my trip to Ireland. It was absolutely incredible. I'm going to do that after the interview. Many of you have already seen the photos, and I posted a bit on social media, but I have a little bit more to say. So stick around, and I'll do that a little bit later. It's funny, when I look at my guests this month, it kind of feels like I'm revisiting some older episodes. We had Austin Basis last week, who I first talked to in 2018. And this week, Neil Greathouse, he was on the show in 2017. I guess that's just what happens when you do this as long as I have been doing it. We started the show in 2015, if you're new. Obviously, technology changes, and so, we keep up to date on that. But, people change too. And Neil has certainly made some changes since that first conversation 6 years ago. He was diagnosed with type 1 back in the early 90s, just as he was finishing training in the Air Force. It was a devastating diagnosis. And while Neil touches on it here, you can listen to his whole story about that in the other episode. I'm going to link that up in the show notes. I wanted to have him back on, though, because since last year, Neil has been posting videos explaining diabetes every single day on social media. When we spoke a couple of weeks ago, he was on number 235 or something. And as this episode goes live, he'll be close to 270. Neil was the director of that amazing Bike Beyond documentary a few years ago. He's got another production cooking. The last time we spoke, he was working as a pastor. He's changed careers, and we'll talk about that. You will also hear us sort of struggle to explain his title. That's on me. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of confusion still when the Certified Diabetes Educator CDE label got changed. But we do get through it. And just to be clear, Neil is a board-certified diabetes educator. A lot more coming up. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Afrezza. And one of the hopes when Benny was diagnosed was for a way to deliver mealtime insulin without injections. There's a way to do that now. Afrezza is the only FDA-approved ultra-rapid-acting insulin. Once you breathe Afrezza into your lungs using the inhaler, insulin appears in your bloodstream in less than 1 minute, and it may start lowering blood sugar in about 12 minutes. You can be spontaneous, but still in control without the need for injections at mealtime. Find out more and see if Afrezza is right for you. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Afrezza logo. Afrezza can cause serious side effects, including sudden lung problems and low potassium, and it's not for patients with chronic lung disease such as asthma or COPD, or for patients allergic to insulin. Tell your doctor if you ever smoked, ever had kidney or liver problems, a history of lung cancer, or if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. Most common side effects are low blood sugar, cough, and sore throat. Severe low blood sugar can be fatal. Do not replace long-acting insulin with Afrezza. Afrezza is not for use to treat diabetic ketoacidosis. Please see full prescribing information, including boxed warning, medication guide, and instructions for use on afrezza.com/safety. Neil, it's great to talk to you, although I feel like I see you every day. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, you do see my face every day. And I'm so sorry about that. I feel terrible.
No,
it's a lot of my face. It really is.
It's fabulous. And
thank you.
Absolutely. as you and I are recording, you are up to part 237. When this airs, it'll probably be well into the 250s or something. Tell me about explaining type 1 diabetes. Why did you start this?
237. I'm starting to get like a little bit of a panic attack right now thinking about it. Yeah, but who's counting, Stacey? Who's counting?
You're counting.
Apparently I am. Yeah. About, a little less than a year ago, I was in a job that I enjoyed, but was starting to look for a job inside of the diabetes space. Large tech companies, large diabetes companies, honestly, you name them, we could go through the list. And I put my resume in and put calls in. Right now, the count is up to 56. I've got 56 no's over the last year.
Wow.
Partway through that process, I started thinking, well, you know what? Like, what if I just started explaining what type 1 diabetes is? It really hit me. I had to get a steroid shot, and my blood sugar went haywire, and I posted a video about it. It's very reminiscent of how I got into this whole space in the first place, way back in 2008. And I did this post, and it was more informative than it was me out acting like an idiot, like most of the other videos are. It's just like, Neil, come on, what are you doing? And it did fairly well. And I thought, okay, well, then maybe tomorrow I'll explain a little bit more about it. And then that eventually turned into video 3. And then I thought, wait, I don't need anybody to hire me. I can just do this on every platform. And the goal was always break it down, simple, bite-sized pieces, so that people that are new to it, people that have been in it for a long time, whoever, can just get a little tiny daily dose of education, a little bit of humor, maybe a little bit of hope. Unfortunately, a lot of my face. And that's where we got.
You had alluded to 2008. Before we go further, can you kind of explain what you meant by your entry into the community?
I moved. We had moved to Little Rock, Arkansas back in 2008, and I started working with a lot of people who didn't know about diabetes. And I got really tired of explaining it to them. I'm just going to be honest with you. I was like, oh gosh, another person. Because I was around a whole new team, whole group of people. So I sat down in the office and I made my first diabetes video explaining. It's a terrible video. I go back and watch it now and I'm like, first of all, my skin was so smooth. My face young. I looked like a baby. I wasn't shaving. It did really well. So then I did another one. I did 5 of them. Stacey, I cannot make this next part up. Medtronic called me and they said, actually, I got terrified. I thought I was in trouble because I was explaining my pump. I was holding my pump up to the camera, talking about it. And it was their head of marketing. And she said, listen, I was walking through our sales office the other day and there were a bunch of people huddled around a computer watching your YouTube videos. And I started looking at them and I thought, man, this would be great. What if this guy could help do a campaign for us? And I said, yeah, okay, I'm your guy. As long as I'm not going to jail because of what I did previously, it's okay. And they built an entire campaign. And I pitched all these ideas. And Stacey, I may have pitched the worst ideas because they shut the whole thing down. They did headshots. We had articles and blog posts and everything. And I think some of the ideas were just too humorous. Like, for real, it was like, hey, if you get diabetes, you get a free ticket to come to Medtronic's. And I was totally joking. I said, you can come to Medtronic and you can tour the office. It'd be like Willy Wonka. Like there's like at the welcome desk, there are giant bowls of, instead of candy, it's just diabetes supplies. It was like, I was just joking. Like I wanted to show them behind the scenes of everything they do. And I may have taken it too far. And then after that, I realized, okay, if they won't do it, then I'll start doing it. And I started posting almost every day. And that was when Instagram was 15 seconds, I think. Yeah. It was a 15-second limit. And I started posting every single day for a year just to see if I could do it.
I didn't even remember there was Instagram.
It barely came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that engagement, I mean, what happened then? You must have gotten a good response.
Yeah, very good. I don't think hashtags were a thing. I don't think any of it was a thing. It was just me being humorous and explaining what I go through on a daily basis. More important than what I was doing in the videos is that I was doing them every day. That is what drew people in because they realized I was showing them real life scenarios of me trying to wear a sensor too long, or me trying to eat, I did it. I ate like an entire package of sugar-free gummy bears and I just said, let's wait and see what happens. And then the next couple of days, it was just footage from outside the bathroom door. You could see the light coming through the bottom of the door and just me screaming in pain inside the bathroom because the sugar-free gummy, I mean, it was just ridiculous stuff, but people found it very compelling and they knew I would be there again tomorrow talking about it and kind of making light of it, but kind of explaining it.
Before we spoke, I looked up the last time I spoke to you, and sometimes I can't believe how long I've been doing this show. We last spoke in 2017 in April, so 6 years ago,
right,
when I talked about your fantastic Instagram account, the Beaties, because that's what got my attention. Like you said, you were posting real life stuff, and I don't know if it actually made it into the episode, but I remember asking you, how are you doing this? Like, I wanted to know the behind the scenes, and I remember you saying, I'm only doing it if I can do it with my phone, I can edit them quickly. That's still the case?
Yes. So what's crazy, Stacey, is I have access to cinema grade cameras, lighting kits, drones. I'm a director. You remember like the whole Bike Beyond thing?
Yeah.
I have access to all of that. I'm sitting in a room right now where I had lights on. I had everything on. I was like, why am I doing all this? So what I do is I force myself to shoot them right now with my phone because of the accessibility. There's a balance between overproduced on one side of the seesaw, and on the other side is authenticity. And the more production you put into it and that side goes up, the authenticity goes down. And so I want it to be where it's approachable and it's not so slick that nobody trusts it or believes it.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to make this into an Instagram tutorial, but I struggle with that too because I come from a TV background. I spent the first 10 years of my career as a TV reporter. And it's been very difficult for me to make videos because, first of all, I'm so old. When I started in television, I had a photographer with me who would handle lighting and sometimes even a producer. Right. So I struggle because if I feel like it doesn't look perfect, I don't want to put it out there, to the point where like I want to put on lipstick and brush my hair every time too. Like it's really hard, Yeah. But I've forced myself to just take out the phone and do it. It's not easy. But before we get too far afield, maybe we'll talk more about technique a little bit later on. Tell me about what you've done for diabetes education for yourself. You've gotten a degree now, right?
I have. I've been busy. I went back and got my certification. Now, to be fair, I just don't have enough time to go back and get a nursing degree. I think my entire family would they would tell me to stop. Like, Dad, stop. But I wanted the education side of it, the understanding, the knowing. Like, why in a private practice, why do they recommend CGMs? How do you use this type of technique? There's just so many things. So I went back to the school and got the certification because I wanted to be able to back up what I was saying. Years ago, back in 2008, I was just a knucklehead that didn't know what I was doing. And at some point, if you start positioning yourself as, hey, I'm going to explain type 1 diabetes, like you should probably know a little bit of the science that goes into it. And it was fascinating. It is actually a little bit detrimental, though. I'll be honest with you. When I go to see my endocrinologist, I'm probably a very tough patient because I'm walking in there with ideas and theories and like, hey, what if we do this? It's very unnecessary. But I did. I went back. It took a very long time, a lot of tests, and I'm just doing it on my own time, just paying for the courses and the certification. You can do it all online, and they update it constantly, so it's really up to date. It's fascinating to me. It's probably, again, like I said, it's probably unnecessary to a point, but I just wanted that for my own conscience. I think if I'm going to talk about and explain type 1, I should probably do a little research,
To be clear, when you say a certification, so what does that mean in terms of like, what would a title be for somebody like that?
So ADCES is, and it's new, a certified educator. Now that used to be called CDE, certified.
That's what I'm saying. So you're not a
no, they've updated it. You're
not a CDCES, certified diabetes care and education specialist.
Yes. No, that's
you are.
Yes. I just don't have the nursing degree side of it. I had to draw the line.
Funny question, but you've lived with diabetes for a very long time.
Very.
Did you get new information from the education that you went through here? Right back to my conversation with Neil. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Omnipod 5. All right, for many of you, as you listen, this may sound like a weird question. Why do you use the insulin pump you've got on right now? there's a really good chance that you went on that pump 15, 20 years ago because it's what your doctor had back then. And you've never really thought about changing. That was us until Benny's pump company went out of business. And I was amazed how much things had changed when we looked for a new one. I'm telling you, it is time to take advantage of what's new. If you need a sign to switch, this is it. Omnipod 5, the tubeless automated insulin delivery system, is here and it's available through the pharmacy, which means you can try it today, even if your tubed pump is under warranty. Fill out the quick online form, see if you're eligible for a free trial. Click on the Omnipod logo over at diabetes-connections.com. For full safety, risk information, and free trial terms and conditions, visit omnipod.com/diabetesconnections. Now back to Neil talking about becoming a diabetes educator.
What's a little bit crazy is you start to look backwards and realize, oh, that's what was really going on. Is it comforting? A little bit. You know, I wish I had done things a little bit different at the very beginning, at the onset, at the diagnosis, because I didn't know what it was. I pushed myself. So, and I think you know this. We talked about this before. I was in the Air Force.
Right.
And during flight training is when my pancreas shut down, but I pushed it for another 4 months past that point where I knew I was sick. My roommates that were in my flight, we were close. We were tight. We had worked so hard to get there. And I said, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to keep pushing because maybe this is something else. And we all agreed because I didn't want to wash out of the program. And it ended up being, I couldn't take it anymore. I was so dehydrated. My vision had gotten very blurry. Well, now I understand the physiology of why that happens. I understand the dehydration. I understand DKA way better. That side of it, yes, I look back, there's a little bit of regret, but also, okay, that's exactly what was happening with my body. And it's fairly impressive what the human body can do, even as your body is like falling apart and it's fighting to keep you alive. It's impressive what our bodies can go through and then bounce back from. The hard part for me is it's like the 7 dark years after the diagnosis until I finally took ownership of it. Those 7 years they're like the dark ages for me because I had a really bad attitude about it. I just ate whatever I wanted. I can remember walking around because they gave me a sliding scale on a piece of notebook paper. And they said, if you check your blood and it's between this and this, do this. And I said, okay. But in my head, I was like, wait a minute. If that's what that means, then I can just inject a whole heck of a lot more insulin and just eat whatever. And I did it. And it was an absolute dumpster fire of 7 years.
And to be clear, Neil, this was 1992.
Right.
I assume you were using the older insulins.
Yep. Yeah.
That's hard. It's hard to inject and eat on those.
Right. Yep. It was regular and NPH. I think I even had 70-30. It was cloudy and you'd have to mix the two. Yeah, first of all, I think like people with type 1 today have access to some of the most amazing things. I don't know if back then we would have said, hey, we have access to these amazing things. But now I look at it and I go, okay, I see where science is going. I see where medicine is going. I do look back at it with a little bit of regret after what I learned, what I did to my own, with what I did to myself those 7 years. But thankfully, I snapped out of it. And again, the human body can bounce back from a lot, no matter, there's people that look at what they did in college and they eventually got out of that too. So yeah, it's okay.
With or without diabetes.
Yeah, with or without it, for sure. So yes, a huge learning curve. I think what it has helped me out now with is more in kind of coaching people, or if they ask questions to give them a recommendation. That's the thing I didn't see coming, Stacey, is so the Instagram feed you see, just, like I'm on all the platforms. These videos are out on Twitter every day. They're on Facebook. They're on TikTok. They're everywhere. But the messages that come in on a daily basis, first of all, I never thought anybody would watch them. Second of all, I didn't realize they would get a response. And then the questions that people have, they're just opening up. They're like, listen, I'm terrified about this, this, and this. Or, hey, my kid is 7. We're going into summertime. We're going to be at the pool and we're going to be in the heat and humidity and all this stuff. And now what can I do? Those kind of questions. I'm like, first of all, like I'm not a doctor, but I will absolutely coach you through all this stuff. That's shocking to me. And I love it. I just didn't see that part coming. I thought it was going to be some videos and people comment and whatever.
Yeah, it's
It's more.
interesting. I get those questions too. And, when I started Diabetes Connections, I actually made the decision that I wasn't going to, I'm not a medical professional, right? I'm a mom. But I made the decision that my show and my groups would not be about those kinds of questions like, well, how do I dose? What do I do?
Right.
It would be more high level information. And I still get a lot of pushback on that and questions, but it's because I'm not qualified. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really not. And I also have a parenting method that a lot of people in the community push back on.
You're the world's best diabetes mom, Stacey.
Why, thank you. But you'd be surprised, really. I do get to this day, how could you let him? I could never. What
Right.
are you thinking? And it's I'm glad. I'll be frank, I missed out on a lot of following and business. But I'm not qualified, and that's not who I am. Anyway.
Yeah, you don't want to start doing something that you're not. You're like, that's not my lane. Like I put
not
some
my
guardrails up here so I don't go in the ditches, but I need to make sure I stay in my lane. That's smart.
It's unethical. It's
Good for you.
unethical. Boy, thank you. I'll get on my high horse.
Good for you.
But you are now qualified to answer those questions in many ways. Have you thought about, is the next step some kind of practice, some kind of business for this, or some kind of coaching?
Wow. So what's interesting is I started doing this at the very beginning because I would have, a company would want to send me something in exchange for, hey, can we send you this product or can we send you this thing and you could promote it on your whatever. And what I say is just the same thing to everybody. That sounds great. I would love to try it out as long as you're okay with me being very honest about my experience with it. And if it doesn't work for me or if I don't like it, are you okay with me saying that? And most of those companies are like, actually, we'd rather not. So I go,
Yeah.
oh, so what you really wanted is you wanted free advertising. Okay, I treat what I'm doing the same way. No one's paying me to do it. I'm not trying to make any money off of it. This is the reason why I got in this community in the first place. I needed to find other people who were like me. What people aren't looking for is somebody else selling them something. So I made that decision a long way off. Now, is this going to be a private practice? No, I don't think so. I have other aspirations. There are movies I want to make. There are other things I want to do. And I think I get too excited about the education side of things that I could get off on a rabbit trail.
You've mentioned movies a couple times. Before we go further, let's talk about that. You were the director of the incredible Bike Beyond documentary with Beyond Type 1 when they rode coast to coast, across the country, that incredible cycling event. What kind of movies are you looking to make now? Are you talking about another documentary, something completely outside of diabetes?
I'm co-producing one right now. I cannot give you all of the details on it just yet, but it is I'll say this, I'm winking right now, but it's even more extreme than what Bike Beyond was. And it's not just cycling. It's so much more than that. The things that we learned with Bike Beyond were, first of all, the stories were more important than the cycling. The struggles of real life and then the people that they met along the way, that was better. So we're going to take some of that and we are going to take it to the next level with some people who just have an incredible eye for direct. So I'm not directing this one. I'm working on producing it. And I think it's going to have a much wider reach than what Bike Beyond did. So we're working on all that right now. Actually started shooting this past weekend.
Is it with Beyond Type 1?
No, it is not.
Okay, I'm not going to do 20 questions, I promise. But is it a diabetes group, or does the group have diabetes? Okay.
Well, so everybody in the documentary does have type 1. This is all about what they are doing in the most extreme ways. Because here's what it comes down to, Stacey. A lot of times kids go to the doctor or we go to an endocrinologist of a newly diagnosed patient. And those doctors, if they're a good endo, they will look their patient in the eye and say, listen, this doesn't have to hold you back. You can still do incredible things with your life. Don't let anybody limit you. And we tell people that, but I think at some point we need to show people that they can do incredible things. A long time we have been saying you can do this, but we haven't done a great job of capturing the stories of the people that are doing it in the most extreme ways. And then if we could follow a family of a newly diagnosed kiddo along the journey of meeting some of these people, these heroes for the first time, it would put you in the seat of experiencing it together. That's what we're working on, showing people that they can do great things, not just telling them.
All right, let's continue Neil's greatest hits. The last time we talked, you were in the ministry.
I was.
And I'm Jewish. I'm not exactly familiar. I will set it up that way. I don't know a lot of people who've kind of gone in and out.
Yeah.
I'm asking, I know this might sound so strange to you, but like, is that something that I know it's not your career at the moment, or
Right.
I know it's not your job at the moment. Is it still something that you're doing? It's still a part of you.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think you can get away from that. Like a lot of people, they talk about religion. I feel like religion is kind of the man-made side of our spiritual walk. We can get into the rules and the regulations. That's not how we do things around here. That's that side of it. The way I believe it is, no, I'm not a full-time pastor anymore, but yes, I am in ministry and I do it every day. It's every single day something comes up. We're still marrying people. We're still out there doing it. Actually, my wife and I got invited. Some incredible friends of ours wanted to get married, and they said, "Can we go on a destination wedding?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." I'm thinking beach, right? Like what do you think? Somebody says destination wedding, you're like
Caribbean,
okay.
Outer Banks.
Yeah, we're all wearing white.
Right.
We're rolling up our pant legs, and we're standing on the beach. No, they wanted to get married on a glacier in Alaska.
Oh my gosh.
We had to fly. So we took a cruise there and then flew, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 helicopters flying the wedding party out to stand in the coldest scenario. They put these crampons on your feet. I felt terrible for the bride. She was freezing. It was incredible. Anyways, yes, still doing ministry, still help out a ton of coaching people in the nonprofit world, 501c3. And just do whatever I can to help coach people through that process, even though that is not what I am being paid to do. I'm seeing a trend here, Stacey. The more I talk about this, I'm doing a lot of things I'm not getting paid for. What am I doing? I have a problem.
No. But you have a full-time job, I assume.
Yes. So I am the deputy director for the state of Arkansas in the Economic Development Commission. If that all sounds foreign to you, it's basically helping improve the quality of life and start new jobs in the state of Arkansas. So there are companies all over the world that are looking for new sites, new locations for their manufacturing, for their tech company or whatever. Our job is to find the right spot for them inside the state of Arkansas.
I would love to get your take on my observation here. Just talking to you, it kind of seems to me like you're explaining type 1 diabetes, your everyday posting. Would you consider that kind of a new ministry for you?
You caught on to that, didn't you? Yeah, Stacey is really smart, everybody. Yes. No, it is. Sure it is.
Genius.
It is. At some point, that word ministry, I think we've looked at it the wrong way for so long. Ministry comes down to helping people, loving them right where they are, helping to take care of people. And I needed it at some point. I remember the first few times I got out there on social media and started following, diabetes hashtags just so I could feel seen and understood. Okay, so I did about, it was almost 30 days of explaining insulin pricing. And that is probably one of the most polarizing topics you could talk about. And people get angry so fast. Stacey, 2 years ago, I did a video where I was trying to explain what one of these nonprofits was doing in accepting money from an insulin manufacturer, and just kind of like, I wasn't even on their side. I was just explaining it. And I got death threats. People were threatening my life and my kids' life. So I'm like, whoa. So I deleted it, took it down. And it was terrifying for me to jump back into the space and talk about something that is so aggravating and frustrating. And I had to say multiple times over those 30 videos, listen, guys, this is a safe place. Let's not spew hatred. If you have questions or you get frustrated and angry, that is okay. All of that's okay. But that's not why we're here. And we could acknowledge it, but just don't attack anybody. And people did get pretty spicy, but they just didn't get into the I want to hurt somebody else, which is good. So yes, this is all turned into that is a way for me to help walk alongside. I mean, I've had type 1 for 31 years. Yeah. Maybe I've learned something. There are some days though, I realize I haven't learned anything. I'm like, why did I do that again? I did it again. What is wrong with me? That happens. And then there are other times where I go, okay, I want to be a little bit ahead of somebody. I want to be walking step in step with somebody. And then I want to find somebody who is brand new to this. I think that's always been there, but it was never as clear as it is right now. I mean, making these videos since 2008 up until now, you think I would have caught on to some of this sooner. But for some reason lately, my goal is I want to encourage you. I would like to educate you a little bit and not overwhelm you, because you go to see your endocrinologist 3 times a year if you're lucky. So this is 60 seconds of some help every single day. And here's the thing. If you miss today, it doesn't matter. I'll be back tomorrow. You can't get rid of me that easy. So it's that side of it. And I'm shocked at how much people don't know.
Yeah.
Like that actually is the thing. That's my biggest takeaway. People go, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. You're going, really? Okay. But that's because we're all getting on the ride at a different spot. No, we're not all perfectly in sync on this. And that's why in about a month, I've got it planned out. I think it'll be the second to last week of May. We'll start talking about diabetes and mental health and diabetes burnout. And it's going to take us 8 weeks to cover all of it. Each week gets one topic inside of diabetes burnout and mental health. So that's the goal, because again, I can't position myself as a mental health expert. I'm a student. You may hear this, Stacey. Actually, I think you probably would have picked up on this. Not one of the videos that I've done have I said, you need to do this or you need to do that. It's always we. It's we are checking our blood sugar. This is, let's not be so hard on ourselves. It's not, don't be so hard on yourself. It's, let's not be so hard on ourselves, because it's inclusive. That's the way I view it. I'm a student just as much as they are. So let's learn together and get a little bit stronger.
Away from the videos for a moment, you've said a couple of times, you're not perfect. You, Neil, are not perfect. You're still making these same mistakes over and over again. You're obviously a driven person. But I'm curious, I always feel, as a person who doesn't have diabetes, I love hearing when people mess up and are kind to themselves, because I think it's such a good lesson for everybody in this community who feels the pressure, right?
Yes.
Are you okay with yourself not being perfect at this point? Do you still, 31 years later, are you still beating yourself up, or have you accepted it a little bit more?
I'm a little bit more accepting, just being real vulnerable.
Yeah.
I do get tired of it.
Sure.
I'm just tired of it. I'm going to that diabetes mental health conference that is online. It's a good one. I'm going to go through it. I'm not a presenter. I'm not anything. I'm just going to go to it because I need it. I'm okay with some of the dumb mistakes, but it's the things that I thought I had figured out and they don't go as planned. Those are the ones that frustrate me. I went on a walk. This is about 3 weeks ago. I went on a walk and I share my CGM data with 2 people. One is my wife, and the other, big shout out to Matt. Matt, it's his handle is Matty from San Diego, but he lives in New Jersey. And I met him. It's just hilarious. He and I share. I get to see his CGM data, and he sees mine. It's because I needed somebody else with type 1 to see it. It's the funniest thing. It's like having somebody else that can see it was one of the most peaceful things for me, because I see his. I'm going, whoa, hey, Matt. And I don't look at it every day, but I'm like, how you doing, man? You okay? Well, anyways, I go on this walk, and it was after dinner. Everything was steady. My blood sugar's solid. I take stuff with me every single time. And I'm listening to a podcast while I'm walking through the neighborhood, and I don't realize I'm tanking.
Wow.
And I'm crashing. And my wife had texted me a couple times, and I didn't see it. I don't know why I didn't see it, but I didn't see it. And I started feeling a little bit like fog brain, not really sure what's going on. And next thing I know, that her car is coming down this neighborhood, and it pulls in like at an angle across somebody's driveway. And she opens up the door. She's like, I've been trying to get you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, check your blood. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, 53 is not great. I've been out here dropping and had no clue. Those things happen. I didn't plan for it. Like, you do the best that you can. I'm okay with making mistakes. I'm just frustrated at the times when you think you've got it figured out and you definitely don't. Those are the ones that get me. And it really bothers me. I don't know why. I can't seem to get over that one.
I appreciate you sharing that. It's not, I appreciate you sharing the low, but I really appreciate you sharing that you can't get over it. And it's just annoying.
Yeah.
Geez.
Yeah.
You-
I don't need that. Like, I got enough things to worry about. Like, I don't need another thing. It really comes down to that. And I'm laughing about it now, but I'm not laughing about it during the
No,
moment.
of course not.
I'm
Of course not.
frustrated.
You also very publicly shared, you wrote about this a couple of years ago, that you went into DKA.
I did, because I'm a knucklehead.
No, because you're a human being with diabetes.
Yeah.
Would you mind just sharing a little bit about that? Maybe what you learned from it? More with Neil coming up, and he is very open about answering that question. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. I have been talking about integration for years, and it is wonderful to see it happening. Dexcom G6 is part of Tandem Diabetes Control IQ system and part of the Omnipod 5 system. My son has been using Control IQ for more than 3 years now, and these systems are really amazing. Everybody sleeps better. The system has his back when he doesn't get the meal bolus exactly right. As a mom, I know I will never stop worrying. We all just think about diabetes a lot less, which is amazing. Learn more. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. Now back to Neil talking about his recent experience with DKA.
Sure. You told me a little while ago, you said you might be very competitive or driven. I would say driven. I don't know if competitive. Maybe both. What I did in that scenario, my pump had gotten kinked inside, in the cannula, and I just kept trying to push through. And I went into DKA within, and I say I kept trying to push through. It was about a day and a half, almost 2 days of just, I'll just give myself a little more insulin, like a little bit more. It's not going down. I'm sure it will, because you don't want to crash. And I got stubborn. And all of a sudden I realized, okay, I'm really high. I've been really high for a while. And in the absence of insulin, those ketones go high. So I checked my ketones. I was like, oh no. Okay. And I asked my wife, I said, Gina, I don't think this is a good scenario right now. I could probably give myself an injection and try and bring it back down, but I think I'm too far gone. And she said, yeah, you think you need to go to the hospital? I'm like, dang it. Like, I'm a grown man. Like, what am I doing? And I was so frustrated with myself, because I went in there and they're like, yeah, no, this is bad. Like, you're really bad. I had to stay in for 3 days, and they had to get that anion gap back up. They had to get my levels back in line. And I realized that stubbornness that I have in, I can fix this, or I can take care of it. It really didn't help me in that scenario. It hurt me. And so I've got to be more than willing to go, okay, it's not going right. I need to do something different, not just keep doing what you're doing and expecting it to work.
Okay, for those of us who are not certified, anion gap?
Yeah, it's called an anion gap, ANION. It is the balance between your pH. It's like when you get to the point where you have this gap between your levels, and they're fighting to give you potassium, to give you electrolytes, because your body is so depleted. It's so acidic. They're trying to get it back to where that alkaline balance is right. So yeah, anion gap. That was the first time I heard of it. And they're telling me that. And in their ICU, I was going, I need you to write that down for me, because I'm going to need to research that one later. You're like, just settle down, man. How do you spell it?
Right, exactly. All of that, the mistakes, the stubbornness, the real life of it all, I think makes you incredibly qualified to share these stories and talk to other people and educate. I'm not happy it happened to you, but I'm so grateful you're using that experience to educate others going forward. One
of the biggest things that I'm learning over this past year is almost all of us have a plan to manage type 1. With a doctor, with a clinician, with somebody who's working with us on a plan. There's a couple things that I've seen a trend with. One, if you have an endocrinologist that is not working well with you, it's okay. They're not failing. You're not failing. Just find another one. That's like a big, you might not have a great option, another option or whatever. But if you ask people on social media, they'll usually tell you, do a little bit of research. Because I had that for years. I had a doctor that I was like, I don't know why, but I feel worse when I get done being around them, because I'm not doing enough, or I'm not good enough, or whatever. And I had to change my attitude when I went in there. I had to say, hey, yes, all those things might be right, or yes, my A1C is there, or my time range is there, but I'm doing the best I can. Can you please acknowledge that?
Yeah.
That was key. That was the first one. The second one was, once we do get a good plan with an endocrinologist and those things are working, almost none of us are working on a plan to handle the mental health burden side of type 1. We just don't get any kind of coaching or help on that. And I see that come up more than I see diabetes issues. It's like the burden of it, the 24/7 of it, the constant nagging, I just want to be done with this is so much. It hit me. I think you and I may have talked about this years ago. I went and I finally got the best A1C I'd ever gotten.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 6.1 and I was elated. And I remember walking back out to the car. I mean, I'm on cloud 9 and I sit down and I realize, oh, I got to do this again. Like I didn't get there and now I'm there. I was like, what? And no lie, Stacey, the clinic where I was right next to a Dairy Queen. And I'm not just being fully honest with everybody. I walked over and I got 2 peanut butter parfaits and I hammered them both because I'm like, I'll show you. It was so frustrating. It's that mentality. We're not arriving at a good time and range. We don't arrive somewhere. We have to stay there. So ups and downs are going to happen and those are okay. It's a marathon of it. So if you can focus more on the mental health side of it, because it helps in how we do all the other stuff. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned.
That's a great thing. I said, I think I wrote it in, I'm at the point where I can't remember which book I wrote this in, but I equated a lot to radio ratings. When I worked in radio, I had a program director who was like, do not live by those ratings or you'll want to die by them. Because one day you can be up, and everybody loves you. And then for whatever reason, the next book comes out. I'm dating myself. The next ppm meter comes out. And suddenly, you're not in the top 5 anymore. And what happened? And if you took it personally on the way up, oh, it's all about me, then you got to take it personal on the way down. I think that it's more difficult, obviously, with diabetes than with radio.
Sure, but it's the same concept.
Helped me. Yeah, it's really helped me over the years with my son to not take everything so personally and to realize that, you did a great job today. Oh, you got to come back and do it all again tomorrow.
I got to do this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you've said this isn't a business, right? It is kind of a ministry, but what's the big goal, if you even have one, for the videos that you're doing daily? Do you kind of daydream sometimes? Like, what's the big, you're not calling Medtronic. We're not making 8x10 glossies anymore. But is there something that you'd really like to accomplish? Is there a number you'd like to get to?
Oh, the goal right now is to make it a year. That'll be every day for a year. I haven't messed up yet. I've come real close, uploading around 11 something at night, but I want to get to a year. And then what I would like to do is spend a little bit more time categorizing things. As I look long-term, what if some of these things could be put together in, I don't want to say it's a book, but something that is a little bit more tactile, more tangible? It's really tricky to find all the videos. You got to scroll back quite a ways if you want to get to the insulin pricing model. I think if we could compile this into some PDFs that we could give away to people, there I go again, just giving stuff away.
Nothing wrong with that.
Compile it and make it available to people, as like an ebook or something like that. That's probably the next step. And I would really love to speak at some events. Haven't had a chance to do it yet in the diabetes space. Maybe a couple times right before COVID, but nothing since COVID. But to actually speak on some of this stuff that I'm learning along the way, I think would be really, really rewarding. Maybe that's mostly for me. I don't know if that would be great for everybody else. I think that would be great. I would enjoy that.
I think that would be wonderful. Put out the call for sure.
Okay, there it is.
Neil, thank you so much. We will link up where people can find you. I was going to say Instagram, but as you said, you're on every platform. That's just the one where I see you the most.
It's on all of them.
Yeah, wow, you're inescapable. But we will put the word out. So if people haven't found you, they can definitely check it out. Thank you so much for sharing your story again and for everything you're doing. I just think it's such an incredible service. Thanks, Neil.
I love your podcast. I think it's incredible. First, and I've told you this 100 times, your voice is like the perfect podcast radio voice. What's crazy though is that's how you sound all the time. This is not a switch you're flipping. Stacey Sims sounds like this every day, and I love it.
Oh, Neil, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
Much more information at diabetes-connections.com. Every episode has its own homepage. You can also use our search feature. We have a very robust search, but I will link up Neil's first episode from back in 2017. That's where he explains really what happened in the Air Force. It's quite a dramatic story. I think it's okay to call it that. And I still think it's incredible. I know a lot of time has gone by, and he will say, what was I going to do? Wallow in it forever. But it was a huge disappointment, and he has just done incredible things with his life. I watch the videos he does, and I'm just amazed. I know he's reaching people who really need to hear it. And I spent last weekend, or I guess 2 weekends ago now, with a bunch of people who are also kind of spreading the word, building community, and doing incredible things. And those are the people of Thrive Diabetes. Now, I know we're a mostly US-centric audience, but I would urge you, I'll put a link in the show notes, and you probably have seen on social media the photos, and I did put some links out for Thrive Diabetes. I would urge you to check it out, because this is how to do local community education on, I was going to say a grassroots level. What I mean by that is, yes, healthcare professionals did attend. Yes, they did get support from Diabetes Ireland and other large organizations. But this is something that was basically started by two women who realized we needed help. We need community. We're not getting what we need. And Grania Flynn and Christine Meehan said, we're going to do it. We're just going to fill this need, and hopefully people will show up. They had been doing this for a couple of years. When COVID hit, they took 3 years. They could not have an in-person meeting for 3 years. So this one was the first since 2019. It was an unqualified success. And I say that not because there were thousands of people there, although it was a really great crowd. I say that because people got the help they needed. They met other people in their community. They got some education. They had some fun with me. They saw incredible technology. I'll give you a perfect example. I met a woman, and I'm so sorry I didn't get her name. She was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. She is in her early 60s. She knows nobody with type 1. She certainly knows nobody her age with type 1 who's just starting out. And she didn't know what to think. She had just decided to come to the conference. She left with information, with hope, with community. She even met somebody her age who had recently been diagnosed. They're going to get together. Think about how isolating this is. I mean, I know I don't need to tell you this. You guys know. You know how isolating a condition diabetes can be. All of that to say, if you are thinking of doing anything community-wise where you live, starting a meetup, having a coffee, reaching out to somebody, please do it. It pays off in the most incredible of ways. It doesn't have to be something huge like Thrive Diabetes or something like my mom's night out events, which, by the way, registration is open. We're so excited for the next 3 cities, Frisco, Providence, and Charlotte. I'll link that up in the show notes too. But you don't have to do something official. Don't let that stop you. I will say, be careful because my big meetups and big events did start with just a dinner out with 3 other diabetes moms. So I guess you never know where it will lead you. All right. Thank you as always to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.